Hello, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Beverly Hills View. I'm happy to introduce our guest, artist Robert Mack, who is in the collection of many of our prominent Beverly Hills residents. Robert Mack was born in Heidelberg, where his father, who was a decorated Air Force fighter pilot, was stationed. He then led the life of an Air Force brat, living around the universe in 16 homes all over the United States, in Japan, and in Germany. He graduated from the University of Maryland with a degree in film, art, and media studies. He's a visual artist who works in a wide range of media arts, including art photography, documentary filmmaking, TV production, video installations, paintings, and he held the position of heading an arts foundation in a school in D.C. So, welcome.
Thank you, Joan. Thanks for having me.
Tell me what kind of school that was and what type of students you had there.
Actually, the school was in Rockville, Maryland. I had graduated from the University of Maryland in film studies, but I did open that gas station. We'll talk about that later. But the school there was an open space school where I taught gifted and talented students, also the troubled kids, the work-oriented curriculum kids. And by the way, they were the ones who made the best movies and films, the troubled kids.
Did you go right from school into teaching there? Or did
no,
you have...
I first opened an art gallery. My father is a painter. Even though I got my film degree, I decided all of a sudden to open an art gallery in Annapolis, Maryland. And what we did, I found this abandoned gas station in Annapolis, and I actually transformed it with my partner into the Decci Gallery, and we were very well received.
And what time was that in your career?
This was back in the 1970s.
But I mean, right in the beginning.
Right in the very beginning. So my father was a painter, my partner was, I was a little bit. We had other artists come from the area in Annapolis. A great, it's the capital of Maryland, and we did have another gas station, the only functioning gas station across the street from our gallery, and so everybody who stopped there would see our gallery, so we were always very busy.
So it was a real gas station. When we were in Berlin a few years ago.
Right.
They were opening a 40s gas station as a gallery,
right.
And we thought it was like so unique, and yet you'd already opened it
right.
many years earlier. And then when I was coming over to the studio, I was looking at two spaces that are all gas stations that serve coffee now.
Exactly.
So it's kind of trendy.
And even Ed Ruscha, as you know, he did quite a few gas stations, iconic images of gas stations.
He did the images, which is the only way to save that. But it's so great that you would do an art gallery out of it, or that they'd open a coffee shop. I know, going back to your work, I know it's been shown in galleries across the United States and in Europe, and you're represented by a very prestigious gallery, Fahey Klein.
That's right.
And the Kleins were big people, big, not supporters of Beverly Hills, but residents in Beverly Hills. Oh. So I'm seeing all this like connection from your art to where we are today.
Yes.
And then we talked about your being an Air Force brat. Do you remember those travels?
Oh, I do. I would be, I'll tell you one funny story. I'm in Texas, 6 years old, 5 years old, brown, skinhead, blonde hair, shorts, and I had my cowboy guns on because I'm in Texas. And my German mother, who was a really great bohemian artist who would have left Germany in spite of the war, she holds up lederhosen from my grandmother. Oh. And said, these are from Omi, and I said, no, I'm a cowboy. And a week later, I was in Japan wearing a kimono.
Oh, so that's how you do. So that's how your life was going.
I was constantly, and I think that also helped me as an artist, visual artist, all the different cultures, but also having to adapt with different people.
Well, that's what I was going to ask
Yes.
you. Did that influence your art?
I think so.
Because subliminally, just what you were saying, you had lederhosen with shorts.
Right.
And then a kimono.
Yes. Well, my most important work, I would say, to date is that After film school and teaching, I also worked at a TV station, but I did break away to do non-commercial television, and I did a study called the Not Guilty by Reason of Insanity.
I know, we're going to talk about that one.
But the access came because of my gift, I would call it a gift, the ability to fit in anywhere quickly. I had to do that over the years.
The other thing, you talked about your father being a painter, but from an Air Force pilot, fighter pilot, right?
Right. Well, here's my father's story, Matthew Mack. You can see his work on MatthewMack.com. I made a little website for him. But imagine you're 19 years old, World War II breaks out. He was smart enough to become a pilot, and so he flew over Germany and bombed Germany for 4 years, survived. Half his squadron passed away. And then he was stationed in Heidelberg, where he met my mother. But the thing is, he was always an artist. And he did stay in as a colonel, retired at 39.
Unbelievable.
But painted for the rest of his life until 91.
Oh, he did? So he did get to paint?
Oh, always. Even he was painting the bombers with, the girls on the side of the plane.
Did he go out into, like, a plein air painter into the fields?
He retired. Well, he retired. He settled in Rehoboth Beach. Actually, Lewis, Delaware is where he was. He had his home. And he would meet his fellow painters, 2 other painters, for coffee at 9 o'clock and have breakfast. And they would go, Matthew, so what are you going to do today? And he goes, I'm done. He had already been to the beach at 5 in the morning, done 2 watercolors at the beach. And he's a very successful, I really was fortunate to have a father who every day I would come home from school, I would see his paintings.
And luckily, he'd already had a career before that.
Yes.
He didn't ever show his work, did he?
He did show his work,
did?
but it's interesting that he didn't really want to market himself. He would do the paintings. He would sell them for $500 to $1,500.
Oh, he would sell them too?
But he never really, he would give them to auction benefits. He didn't really market himself, but he was as good as Andrew Wyeth, I think. He was that good with plein air watercolors, very difficult.
And had he studied it before?
He did study off and on with different artists, but he was always an artist from day one.
He had his own.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned, so we went through the school where you taught.
Yes.
And you mentioned working at Group W Productions.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Well, when I finished teaching at that experimental school, I also taught adults, but I did a grant film, and that grant film, I heard there was a opening at a TV station in Baltimore, Group W, which had stations around the country.
Oh, in Baltimore.
And they did hire me. I was their serious documentary producer. I was there for 2 years, and it's a funny story that down the hall was this African-American woman who was very nice. I always said hi to her, and we talked about working together. And I won't go into the details of one story, but she got frustrated with the management there, and she quit and went to Chicago, and it was Oprah.
And she made it in Chicago.
But didn't make it big in Baltimore.
No, it's a good thing she went to Chicago, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
yes.
was like her opening.
Yep.
So you did filmmaking there. What kind of films were they?
I did documentaries on stress. We did, I interviewed Werner Erhard, and we went with police officers who are trying to control their stress levels when they're confronted with, a violent situation.
But was it for just local
It was
TV?
national
Oh, it was
television.
national?
Yes, it was, And then I finally decided I wanted to do something on a very serious subject. John Lennon had been killed, John Hinckley had shot President Reagan, and I was fascinated by the subject of mental illness, and so I ended up researching prisons first, and then an art therapist had a program where she invited artists in to interact with the patients at a hospital for the criminally insane. This was years ago where it was allowed back then.
So, did you make a film on that?
I did film there. Don Lenzer, one of the greatest cinematographers in the country, he shot at Woodstock. He shot George O'Keeffe's Running Fence. He shot George O'Keeffe documentary. He also shot with the Maisel brothers, the Christos Running Fence. And Grace Siccardi, a dear friend of mine, also joined me. And besides making the film, we also did a photographic study of the patients there. I was there for 2 years doing the project, and we spent a summer photographing the patients.
We have a couple of photographs. Maybe you can tell. tell us, before we see the photo, how you had access, how you came and went from
Well,
this mental institution?
Yes, it was maximum security. I mean, today, you know, it's impossible to have access unless you're a family member or a psychiatrist. But the art therapist liked what I was doing, what I wanted to do. The superintendent also trusted me, and the patients trusted me. I spent a lot of time there getting to know them.
Was it a big facility? Was it fenced in? How was it?
Oh, maximum security. You know, when you went in there, it was like going into an ultra secure facility. And the patients were open to what we were doing. I didn't want to know what crimes they had committed, because many of them, unfortunately, had killed people.
They had committed crimes. Tell us a little bit about this one photograph.
Oh, that's a gentleman who was very sweet and nice. He would play chess, and he'd just come out of the shower, and I usually don't pose people, but he had such beautiful hands. I asked him to put his hand up there, and that image became the poster for the Baltimore Museum of Art. After 3 years after we did the photography, Grace and I, the museum saw the work, and you know, they booked 3 years in advance at museums, but they gave us a major museum show, which was very well received by the city, by the patients, by the families. I was on All Things Considered, so it was very successful.
There's another
Yeah,
shot.
that was just one of the gentlemen in the basketball court. I didn't, again, want to know what they had done, but I do know that more than half of the men had killed people.
Was it all men's facility?
It was all men's facility, but today there are women at this facility now. But the men, I would say generally they were schizophrenics who were hearing voices, and because intervention didn't take place, they would have a psychotic episode and bad things would happen. That's the one thing I learned about doing this project, that if you have a family member or a friend who's starting to talk in crazy ways, it's time to intervene.
I love this one because he's pressing his face against the glass.
Yes, he was looking at me, and it's one of the few images where the patients are actually smiling. He was a very nice young man, but again, you know, there are people in there who are 18 years old up to, you know, 80 or 90.
What kind of equipment were you using? What could you bring in there?
Obviously, since they're schizophrenics, I'm not using flash, you know, which would upset them. And they knew that we were doing the project and were very open to it. So I was using a Nichromat film plus X-Tri-X.
The people there in it didn't mind that you came and took their pictures?
No,
like those? Did they pose for you?
Sometimes they would pose, sometimes not.
Oh, so it just depended?
Yes, and it went really well. And when we had the museum show in Baltimore, even the patients were very pleased that they were being shown for the first time. Because usually what happens, once they're put into the maximum security prison, their hospital, they're forgotten.
They're kind of
Yes.
lost. It shows us, doesn't it, what is going on that we don't know about and how we have to really deal with it and
Exactly.
work with it.
The issue is still current today. I mean, many of the mass shootings, unfortunately, have to do with, yes, guns, but also people who are mentally unstable. And I think that's why the work is still very timely. And in fact, there was a group show that a dear friend of mine helped me set up. She introduced me to everyone. Steffi Schneider, a really great Polaroid artist. Doug Bush also. We had a show at the Dogtown spaces in Venice.
Oh, yeah.
25 artists, Chuck Arnaldi, others. And the curator was German Thomas Schönbeck. And out of the 25 artists, he saw one of my Criminally Insane photographs and then gave me a major museum show in Mannheim, Germany, several years ago.
Right. So the series was called Not Guilty by Reason of Insanity.
Yes, which is...
And you got away with doing that. Yeah,
yes,
right.
Yes. And in fact, that's what happens. John Hinckley, you know, tried to kill President Reagan. When the psychiatrist evaluated him to see if he could stand trial, they realized he was completely insane. So they put him in a hospital for the criminally insane rather than a prison.
But the same type of space that you went into.
Yes, yes.
I see. The hospital for the criminally insane.
That's right.
Before you did that project, I think you were running a nonprofit in New York. Was it before or after?
I wasn't running it, but I was a principal
Right.
for the foundation. I'll tell you how that happened. After
Was it in before this series?
It was after. I did the series first, and two brothers, Mark Jury and Dan Jury, really great photographer, artist, Mark Jury did a book called Gramp about his grandfather died at home, which was a bestseller during the year of Roots. They knew about my work. When I arrived in New York City broke, after working 2 years on the Not Guilty project, you know, it was just a pure art project on my part. They saw my work. They said, come over to our foundation, and then all of a sudden the three of us ran Valley Filmworks, where we were promoting documentary film as an art form. And there was a doctor in Soho, I won't mention his name, but he was an angel for us because he loved what Mark and Dan was doing. He loved what I was doing with the criminally insane, and he gave us $4 million to spend to promote documentary film as an art form.
So you were getting applications?
Yes, we would give grants.
And then you would give grants?
And one really interesting thing that we used the marketing techniques of Hollywood for documentaries. So rather than showing the films at a small little Village Voice theater or the Film Forum, which we love, you know, New York City, we went uptown to the Carnegie Hall Cinema.
Oh,
we
neat.
booked a 2-week festival, sold out the entire, used all the marketing techniques, and I did there was an Oscar night for documentaries.
So it was the festival.
It was a festival, and then we produced, like you were doing television, we did a documentary night for Oscars, an Oscar night type program for documentary film. My talent was Walter Cronkite, Jack Valente, Louis Malle. Sitting next to me was Martin Scorsese, and I did all of these beautiful film clips from documentary history, and we closed it with a gospel group. And Scorsese turns to me afterwards and he said, "You did good." So I was very, I was very happy that he liked it.
He knew that, right?
It was a great evening.
Was really great.
That was great.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back and talk about your rap series. So don't go away. We'll be right back with Robert Mack.
They're coming. Places, everybody.
Light check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Everything looks good on our end.
And lights.
Come alive with the forest. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Beverly Hills View. I'm here with artist, filmmaker Robert Mack, who has a lot of his work in some of our Beverly Hills residence collections. So you know that he's been in Beverly Hills and he knows our city very well. But besides that, Robert, I know you started a project of photographs.
Yes.
Called the Rap Series.
Yes.
And before we talk about the Rap Series, when you do photographs, do you usually work in a series or like a subject matter, like agriculture or buildings or?
Yeah, I have a lot of young artists who come to me and ask me about advice about doing photography or film. Especially with photography, it is a good idea to not only take good photographs, but try to tell a story and do a series. You know, that's when it seems to work best, where you go from one beginning, like Robert Frank did The Americans. He went across America, documented it in a beautiful way, and it became a book. And that's what happened with some of my work.
But so you could concentrate, say, on nature or on, and when you teach, do you teach your students that that's how they should?
I don't tell them that that's what they should do, but I show them other artists who've done that or my own work, and I do encourage them to think about, you know, it's also artists are supposed to write an artist statement as well.
Exactly.
Yes, and so that helps. I recently applied for a grant. I've been doing a film on a very well-known Topanga artist, and we recently applied for a grant, Maria Lacey and myself, my associate, and the grant proposal asked all these great questions, which helps you formulate your ideas for what you're doing.
So when you fill out the form, it has all those things on it?
It asks these questions. What's your statement? What are you trying to say? Who are you trying to do this?
I see.
It's a really great way to learn how to approach a project.
I see.
Go apply for a grant, but not too many. It takes forever.
It does take a long time, doesn't it?
It does.
There's a lot of entities who give grants.
That's right.
And I think it's fabulous, but why does it take so long?
Yeah.
Talking about just having one specific subject,
Yes.
the WRAP series, and
Yes.
we're calling it WRAP. It's not like a rapper, it's a WRAP, like
That's right.
you are wrapping your subjects.
Right.
How did that come about?
Well, Christo, and his wife has been wrapping buildings forever, and I think
I didn't think about that.
when he first started, that wasn't my inspiration. What happened was, well, there was a two-part. The first thing, I was going to wrap myself in Christmas lights for a Christmas card present, and my neighbor came by, so I wrapped her and created a beautiful image. And then a friend came by and said, "Would you photograph me?" And so she sat on the bed, and I took a nice portrait. Maybe she wanted to be an actress. And then I said, "Close your eyes." And that got more interesting. So then, even better, I said, "Lay back." And then I took some material and threw it over her face. And then it became even more interesting. So I was sort of finding my way for this series.
So it found you, really.
In a way, yes. But I
Yeah.
did see, Sally Mann is a good friend of mine. She's a great photographer. And I've known her since she first started, way, way back, because I owned some land near Lexington, Virginia. And I saw one photograph that she took of her son where he had stitches in his head. He was lying back, a little bit of blood, and she covered him with this material. And that probably affected me. And I was thinking about covering subjects with material and creating photographs. You know, when a bride, when Megan gets, you pull back the veil and reveal, or when someone passes away, you cover them with material. And so it creates a different layer, which I find interesting.
It does create something in your work, because
Yes.
now that you're mentioning it, after seeing a whole body of your work or a portion of the body of your work, it has those mystical feelings. Like this has a very mystical feel.
Yeah, this one was taken the other night where I have an exhibition here in town in Los Angeles on the roof. And I used the material in a sense to paint with it. I actually took the material, and I guess, I don't even remember doing it because I'm in a zone when you're creating, but I believe I took the material and pulled it from her eyes, so it looks as if, you know, she's crying, which I find emotion is a very powerful image, and I like that one of Chloe quite a bit.
We're talking about different kinds of fabrics.
Yes.
This is obviously not a see-through fabric.
No, well, most of it is organza, but there was a show that I was, an exhibition in town, and they asked me, "Do you have any blue images?" So I usually don't use Photoshop. I usually just leave the imagery pure. But in this case, I decided to, I take all of my WRAP series lately in the desert, but this one is a dear friend, Hannah Muse, underneath the material. I wrapped her with it, and then I did add the blue, and the black background is the actual desert where she was.
So you actually painted this. This is like a painting in a way, right?
In a way, my WRAP series are becoming more and more like paintings, and I'm probably heading to where my father was a painter. I have done a few paintings, and I'll be doing more.
I'm calling them paintings. When I
you.
see them, you know, I say, like, oh, that painting.
Yes.
And then this is two people at one time.
This is two people, two dear friends, an actress friend of mine on the left, and on the right is a gentleman named Maurizio Saravia. He was a beautiful poet. He had a condition like the Elephant Man, actually. I don't know if you can see the right side of his face. His jaw is big. So I put the two of them together. I did images, but I also made a video that has become really well known. It's called Someone Said, and it's an examination of beauty. And it was a wonderful, I'm very proud of the little video that we made, and he loved it.
So this cute little boy.
Yes, this is Ulrika Cantors, who lives in Beverly Hills. And Ulrika is really well known in the art world. That's her grandson, and she commissioned me. I do sometimes wrap people on commission, like Warhol did for many people. And this was done several years back. He's now a young man, a baseball player, 6'3".
Wow.
But
That's so beautiful.
You can see the wrapped material, how it comes from his face.
But how do you decide what kind of material to use? Oh, look at this. It's so adorable.
This is Desmond Nakano's daughter, and Candace, their daughter, who Desmond is a writer-director, rather well known, and he asked me if I would wrap his baby. So we did so, and that turned out nice. That's white organza. Sometimes I use turquoise, different colors.
You do use different colors?
Yes, of course.
Well, but on the other, like Ulrika Cantor's grandson,
it was a white background.
Fabric?
It's the same fabric, yeah.
So how do you choose your fabrics?
It depends sometimes what the person might be wearing. Like if you were wearing this, you do something like my shirt and your hair because it kind of complements.
You mean like wrap me in this color?
Yes, possibly.
Oh,
yeah.
You would. And then how do you choose the fabrics? Where do the fabrics come from?
Garment District downtown. I went down there and bought the bolts of material, and I take it with me to the desert. And
you buy bolts?
Well, rolls, yeah.
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 So, but all different colors or all
yes.
different thicknesses?
Sometimes
does it matter?
even black, because if you put black down, then you put the person, the subject down, and the material, it's like infinite. So it doesn't, these are white.
Those are all white?
Yes.
When you shoot for a show, do you use just regular people, or are they models, or where do you get people from?
I've been involved in the film business for years. I've had produced documentaries that Showtime has bought, and I've even got a couple of feature films that I've developed. But I sort of stayed away from photographing celebrities. It's a wonderful way. Irving Penn is one of my favorite photographers. But I just usually work with people that I know and met that like me. I try to stay away from the bigger names just because then it becomes more intimate. It doesn't have already established notoriety behind the imagery.
What kind of camera do you use?
Back then I was using Nichromets, the one of the blue Hana. That was done with a Tri-X film, still film, but I also shoot today with, I have a brand new camera that everybody has the latest cameras, but it's a Sony camera that's really great. But I also learned one thing, that even an iPhone, today the iPhones are getting so sophisticated that you can even do tight depth of field. It's amazing.
And they've done documentaries, they've done feature films with iPhones, right?
Steven Soderbergh, his last two projects with the iPhone 6.
So you use that too?
I use that, yes. In fact, the one where the woman, Chloe, was crying, that was done with the iPhone Live because I wasn't out in the desert. But I usually, I use both cameras.
And then how do you decide on the location? Does it have to be a specific open space? Or?
Yes. Thanks to dear friends, I've been able to use a house out near Joshua Tree where the land is perfectly flat. And what I do is I have the subject there up at 4:35 in the morning. I photograph the subject after wrapping them before the sun comes up. While they're still in the dream state, because some people have said my work is, addresses dreams, transcendence, death, different thoughts, come out when people see my work. But I photograph them with this beautiful blue light or whatever the color is from nature, because there's no makeup and hair.
Oh, right.
There's no assistance. There's no flash. There's nothing. It's just myself and the subjects, sometimes men and women, sometimes just men. And what happens is there's a certain intimacy that I'm after by doing this approach. And when the sun all of a sudden rises, it's like 2001. It's like it beams across and it creates the most beautiful light. So I try to do all of my shooting now out in the desert with the wrap series.
And then once you've taken this shot, how do you decide what size to make the print? Because I think everything we saw, there's some are black and white, some are color, larger, smaller.
Yes. Well, it's interesting for photography. Some people can do Polaroids, like Warhol. You could have a show of just his Polaroids because he's so well known. But is bigger better? Well, sometimes. I went into a gallery once and I saw Francis Bacon that was 10 by 15 feet, and it was like astonishing. So I sometimes print my work really big, traditional old school, where you have just a print, you can mat it and frame it. small, medium size, and even big. And the show that I have here in Los Angeles now, I decided to print them and mount them on aluminum, even create a wooden backing sometimes that's beveled edge.
So do you print it right on the aluminum? Is it printed right
You
on
print first, the lab mounts it to the aluminum, and then they put a UV screen over it to protect it so it's archival. And so it depends on, you know, where I'm showing and what I'm doing and who's buying. The collectors sometimes say, I want a big one, and then that's fine.
I see. So it's all different.
Yes.
It's all different. You, we talked about your heading that
Valley Filmworks, yes.
Yes, that was the nonprofit.
That was a nonprofit.
Yeah, we talked about that. And you're very knowledgeable on what to do. You've also applied for grants, so you know all this. And you decided to start this Morongo Valley Artist Residency.
That's right. It's actually not fully operational, but it is. We've set it up with the IRS. It's a 501c3 foundation, and what that is a foundation that promotes a specific, like educational or the arts. And in this case, I've decided, I bought recently 5 acres in the desert near Joshua Tree in Palm Springs. And what I'm going to do when the grants come in or the donations come in from individuals is I'm building a case study house from the 50s and 60s, glass house.
So there's nothing on the property right now.
Just 5 acres now.
Build
Yes.
a house, which will be the residency for the artists?
For the artists, and there will be a stipend for them. So we'll have maybe an artist would get a grant for 2 months to come there. They could paint, they could write, they could do music, they could...
One person at a time.
One person at a time, not a group. Like Martha is great in Texas, but the idea here is to come and be by yourself as an artist, not be influenced by everything going on in the world, maybe even stay off the internet and just go inside and create work that way.
But you talk about it as being kind of an isolated place, but there's a lot of different things going on in that community. What else is going on
It's amazing
there?
What's happening in the desert now. Joshua Tree, of course, is booming. There's 29 Palms nearby, which has the casino and the Marine base.
And yours is named after the Indians, the Morongo Indians,
The Morongo
right?
Indians, that's right. And then there's also Planet X going on right now, which Ed Ruscha's got his name on that. There's also the Bombay Beach Biennial, which happens every year.
What is that?
That's a sort of an outsider artist activity on the Salton Sea, where different artists come once a year. And it's a little bit like Burning Man, but it's also very interesting because it's more philosophical. There's Tao and Stefan and Julie who've set it up, and everything is...
Where do they stay, the Salton Sea?
Some camp, RVs.
Do they?
It's a fascinating town and a really great art happening that happens
But
every
is
year.
that body of water still
It's
active?
toxic, yeah. And so maybe the artists are bringing attention to this area, which used to be a resort town. And maybe that's going to help in the future with, trying to save the Salton Sea, which has salt in it.
You mentioned Ed Ruscha. I think
Yes.
he has the Noah Purifoy. He's
That's right.
behind that.
Yes.
What is it, an outdoor
Noah Purifoy was an
museum?
African-American sculptor, artist here in town, and I know he went out to the desert, and Ed Ruscha helped him set up a foundation for him. And Paul Ruscha, our dear friend, is a board member of that foundation. And he has an outdoor sculpture garden. Most people go to Joshua Tree, they don't even know the Noah Purifoy outdoor sculpture garden is there. But the LA County Museum last year did a major exhibition of Noah's work.
I sat on the Arts Council with Noah Purifoy.
Oh, yeah.
And he was absolutely fantastic in that he knew the state from top to bottom. He would just involve himself in what the California Arts Council was doing, and he would stay with people all along the cities, up and down, and then he'd come and report what was going on. And he also said he was an artist, but at that point, no one really knew very much about his art, and gave him much credit for it. So the idea that LACMA did this great show and that Ed Ruscha and Paul and their friends have this foundation is absolutely brilliant, because this was a great person. He was a wonderful guy.
Exactly, and his sculpture is found objects, and they're amazing. They're amazing.
I know. And what we're talking about, about that and the Arts Council and people helping it and nonprofits, etc. I know Beverly Hills is one of your places where
Yep.
you've given a lot and helped with charities and given your work to be sold at charities. But you do have collectors here.
I do.
And one is very interesting. I mean, they're both very interesting. I mean, the two that I know, I don't know about the other ones. But the Harry Warner estate idea,
Yes.
tell me about that a little bit.
Well, through an actress friend of mine, I met Daphne Ziman, and Daphne and her husband Richard, they bought the Harry Warner estate, which was built in 1923 here in Beverly Hills. And Daphne was amazing. She completely restored the building that was built by Harry Warner. Actually hired Paul Williams.
Right, it was a Paul Williams house.
And it was his first big mansion that he got to design. And Harry Warner, of course, from Warner Brothers, actually put Paul Williams on the map as an architect because of that. So Daphne and Richard bought the house maybe 23 years ago, and she completely restored it. And it's an amazing property in Beverly Hills, and she has two of my rap series in the guest house. And recently, Prince Harry's representative and Meghan's representative came to see the mansion, and also they were in the guest house. He was in the guest house, and he loved the two rap series, so that was nice that
he pointed those out. What
yes,
about the house? Is
yes.
he going to buy the house?
So we'll see. Well, there is a billionaire right now who wants to buy the Warner Brothers estate, Harry Warner estate. I don't know what will happen there, but it's an amazing piece of property with a great history, a celebrity history from, the James Dean was in the pool and Rita Hayworth, and it goes on and on. And I've been helping, Daphne's a dear friend and supporter of my work. She also runs a television station 24/7 on Verizon called Cinema.
Oh, so have you been involved in that?
Yeah, one of my documentaries, I've chosen subjects that usually, I don't want to call myself a humanist, but usually deal with issues like mental illness, like the criminally insane, like faith. I did a documentary on Robert Schuller, the televangelist.
Oh, right, fabulous, right.
Yeah, different subjects. And I did one with two other filmmakers on the Rodney King riots.
Mm. Did she show all of these on
And
her
she
channel?
shows that documentary on the television channel. It's called LA Homefront. And I think I told you once that when we finally had a party, Showtime bought it. We made it for hardly anything. And it was a look at 5 different families talking about the riots and race, and in a more intelligent way than most of the pundits on CNN. And
Because a real
these
person.
are real people. It was
Right.
really great.
Right.
And so when it aired on television, I'm really excited. My first, film on Showtime, and President Clinton appears back then, and he goes, "This is an important film combating racism in America." So I was very proud of that.
That's excellent. And also we talked about Ulrika Cantor,
Yes.
whose husband, Paul Cantor, had a gallery here, a big gallery.
Yep.
She's a great art collector and has art salons at her house on,
Still.
yes, she still does, across from church, or across from Good Shepherd.
Right.
So she also collects your work.
Yeah, she collected my Not Guilty work, and we've become dear friends. And by the way, most people don't know Ulrika, but she's amazing. I mean, she had her own gallery.
Yeah, she had her own gallery too.
And she's involved with the Warhol Foundation, but she even had the first show in Los Angeles of Basquiat's work.
Oh, she did
She
at
did,
that time?
and she continued doing that. Her husband, Paul Cantor, was one of the biggest art dealers in contemporary art in Los Angeles. And she actually commissioned me to wrap her 2 grandchildren.
I know, we saw the pictures, which was great.
Yes.
And another connection to Beverly Hills was the Fahey Klein.
Yes.
Because Mr. Fahey, whom I've known for years and years,
Yeah.
was connected to Eugene Klein, who had a huge house up here not far from the Harry Warner estate, a beautiful estate. And I remember the first time Jack and we were just married, and we went over for cocktails at the house, and there was this Salvador Dali hanging over the bar, just very casually. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this how it's going to be? Because I had only seen museum art in, say, like the Jaffes, who went to Westlake with me. They had a Tamayo in the dining room, but I didn't think much of the Tamayo because it was just a watermelon.
Right.
But the Salvador Dali, really awed me, and it was like one of those things where, as people here we open the world to other people.
Exactly, and people like Geffen, you know, who has a great collection. There's so many people from Hollywood who live in Beverly Hills and in Los Angeles who have great art collections as well. And it's nice that, you know, when somebody finally, like the postal worker in New York City and his wife, who collected contemporary art early on, they would go and buy a painting for $300 that's now worth $3 million.
Right.
And they donated their entire collection to an organization, you know, one of the foundations.
But they also opened up. They were opened up to art, and they opened it up to other people too.
Yes.
I think it's great. Our city has a wonderful art collection. We have a lot of art outside in our parks, and I like to show people who come from other places that we have this art that we're interested in.
It's interesting. For one of the documentaries I've been doing, I interviewed Andrew Perchek at the Getty.
I love Andrew Perchek.
Who created the Pacific Standard Time concept. And then also I did an interview with Michael Govan, who's the director of the LACMA, and he was at DIA in New York City, and he worked at the Guggenheim, and now he's been out here for years doing a great job. And he said there's something quite different about the Southern California art compared to New York. And he said what the artists are doing here, it has to do with light and space, you know, the 60s artists like James Turrell and Mary Corse and different ones. And he finds it really special, and I find it great that, you know, Los Angeles and Southern California has its own kind of identification in the art world now.
I think we do, and I think that's a good note to stop on.
Okay.
So thank you, Robert.
Thank you for having me. It's great.
And thank you, Beverly Hills people, for watching The View. We'll see you next time. I'm Joan Quinn.